Welcome to God Talks with Michael Savage. I just completed a discussion of forcibly removing 1.7 million Palestinians from Gaza, which I think would be a disaster for the world. But I had earlier suggested that I would discuss the actual meaning of the Ten Commandments. So, who am I to say the actual meaning? I didn't write them. I don't know the man who wrote them. The man who wrote them, or the person who wrote them, is God. And they were given to Moses on Mount Sinai. So, what I'm going to do with you today, and the comment board is open, the chat board is open. Many of you like my God Talks. Welcome to Michael Savage and the Savage Nation. So, let's begin. So, I'm going to read to you from a Jewish religious book on the Ten Commandments. You don't have to be Jewish to understand that the Jewish people have been studying the words of God for thousands of years. And the three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, basically all follow the Ten Commandments, not in different ways, in the same way. But what do they actually mean? So I'm going to read to you from a religious book called a Chumash, the 5 books of the Torah with an interpolated translation and commentary based on the works of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's one sect of the Jewish people, a very devout religious sect, the Black Hats. So let's begin at the beginning. There are the 10 Commandments behind me, given to me in a model by a friend of mine who has since gone to heaven at one of my birthday parties. It seemed like yesterday, but it wasn't. And I never paid that much attention to them. They used to be on the wall of the elementary school that I went to in the Bronx, New York. And when you doze off listening to the teacher you were bored, you'd look up at the board and you'd see things that you shouldn't do. And you didn't pay that much attention to them. But they gave you like a roadmap. Now the roadmap is, if it feels good, do it. And worse than that, if it's immoral, do it. If it's illegal, do it. God doesn't exist. America's horrible. That's the message that you have in schools today. That's why one day I'm going to do a whole topic on eliminating the Department of Education. Trump's 100% right about that. 1, God then spoke all these words, the 10 Commandments, from out of the darkness, the fire, and the cloud that covered the mountaintop. The people responded to the preceptive commandments by saying, yes, we will. And to the prohibitory commandments by saying, no, we will not. What is the first commandment? You've heard it 100 times. First commandment, I am God, your God. This means that you are now officially obligated to fulfill all my commandments. However, your relationship with me is not merely contractual. You do not consummate it simply by discharging your legal obligations to me. For I am the one who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of Pharaoh, where you were slaves. By freeing you from Egyptian slavery, I have made you, in effect, into my slaves. Your lives are from now on to be totally oriented toward your divine mission, and you no longer have any private lives at all. Did you ever hear that before? No, you didn't. Do you understand what I am saying to you? These are the real 10 commandments. I'm reading to you, now a slave of God. You never heard that, did you? So the first commandment is a believe in God and you're a slave of God. Second commandment, you must not possess any idols of other people's deities as long as I ever or wherever I may be. Where these deities are worthless, they do not answer those who call upon them. That's self-explanatory. Next commandment, you must not make yourself a sculpted image or any other type of likeness of anything that is in heaven above or on earth below, or in the water lower than the earth surrounding it, even if you do not intend to worship it. That means all art should not be created. I don't know if I go along with that one. blow up every piece of art on the earth. You burn every painting. That's what ISIS did in the Middle East when they rampaged. I'm sorry. See, I'm not a biblical absolutist. You have to understand, I am not a biblical absolutist. If I were, I'd have to stone myself to death. You'd have to stone yourself to death. Everyone is a sinner. So when you hear the commandment, you must not make yourself a sculpted image or any other type of likeness of anything that is in heaven above or on earth below or in the water lower than the earth, even if you do not intend to worship us. You can't make a painting? Makes no sense to me. Next commandment. And if others make such idols, you must neither prostrate, different word. A lot of people make a mistake between prostrate and prostate. One is a gland and the other is an act or an action. You must neither prostrate yourself before them, nor worship them, for I, God, your God, am a zealous God in this regard. For those who hate me and worship idols, I am a God who remembers the premeditated sins of the fathers, adding their demerits to those of their descendants, but only up to the third and fourth generation, and only if these descendants also worship idols. That's nice. It's nice to hear that's only up to the fifth generation. This is all under idolatry. 6. But in contrast, I am a God who shows kindness for at least 2,000 generations to the descendants of those who love me and worship me alone out of that love, and for 1,000 generations to the descendants of those who observe my commandments solely out of fear or respect. Such is the difference between being motivated by love and being motivated by fear or respect. Big difference. Do you follow God's words out of fear and respect or out of love? Third commandment. See, I'm giving you the inside data here. The third commandment. You must respect God's name. You must not swear by the name of God, your God, in vain, by using it to swear that something is something that it manifestly is not. For example, you must not swear that a tree is a rock, for God will not absolve anyone who swears by his name in vain. The Sabbath, the fourth commandment. Are you following me? Do you want me to continue? I just need to know if you want me to continue. That's all. It's simple question. This is being broadcast live on several channels now. Let's see. Is it up on X right now? I think it is. Let's see what we have on X. I don't know. I don't see it. I don't know why it's not live on X. It should be. Am I not live on X? Did I not I don't know if I made this live in the right places. It should be live on all these channels. You know, I'm working alone today, and sometimes I make mistakes here, to be honest with you, and I may not have put it up on the right channels. I don't know if I did. I can continue. Let me call Billy in the middle of this and say, Billy, am I live on the 3 networks that I'm normally on? You'll hear me talk to him. I'm working alone on a Sunday. I just did a thing on Gaza, and maybe I'm a little tired right now. Maybe I shouldn't do this. So give me a moment, please.
Yes, sir.
Billy, I'm live, right? Is this live on X and on YouTube and on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay. The answer is yes. Thank you, Billy. Billy's a wonderful person. He just came back from church and he's working with me. Where were we, folks? I'm putting up the chat again. I like to hear your comments. We're going up to the real 10 commandments, not just the ones you saw in school or you see in church or on the walls of a synagogue in Hebrew. I'm reading from the deep Hebrew analysis. Fourth commandment. Remember and observe the Sabbath day continuously, thereby keeping it holy. Remember it by anticipating its arrival during the preceding week. That's interesting. 4, if you come across some special food item, set it aside for the Sabbath. Observe the Sabbath by refraining from performing on it all categories of prohibited work. Okay, it's pretty clear. Jews gave us the Sabbath. You're supposed to rest your animals as well. 6 days must you labor and do all your work, but even if you have not finished all your work during the 6 preceding work days, nevertheless. The 7th day is a Sabbath dedicated to God, your God. You should behave on the Sabbath as if all your work has been completed. You must not do any work, neither you nor your son or your daughter. Even though your children are not technically obligated to observe the commandments until they attain majority, you must nevertheless not permit them to engage in any form of forbidden work. Your bondman and your bondwoman are forbidden to work. That's your maid and your gardener. Your bondman and your bondwoman are forbidden to work since they are obligated to observe all the prohibitions that you are. You may also not make your animal work. The resident alien who is permitted to live within your gates is also forbidden to work, although not to the same extent that you are, whatever that means. This is all a continuation of the fourth commandment. For in 6 days God made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that is within them, and he rested on the seventh day, even though he did not need to rest, since he did not become tired by creating the world. Rather, he rested in order to set an example for you. God therefore blessed the Sabbath day by ordaining that in the future a double portion of manna would fall on Friday, allowing us to rest on the Sabbath. And this indeed happened, as you have seen, and he sanctified it by ordaining that in the future no manna would fall on the Sabbath, thereby preventing us from pursuing our material needs even if we had wanted to. This too happened, as you have seen. So most people, they spend their Sabbath watching football or on sports or entertainment. That's the modern world we're in. All we know is we don't work. We don't worship God. We don't work. Then we go to the fifth commandment. Honor your father and your mother so that your days will be lengthened in the land that God, your God, is giving you. It's a big one. Honor your father and your mother so that your days will be lengthened in the land that God, your God, is giving you. The opposite is also true. If you do not honor your parents, your days will be shortened. Now, I looked into this and I wrote it in my book. I'm going to get it for a minute. God, Faith, and Reason. Would you please bear with me? I need to get my own book on this subject for a reason. Because I once wrote a whole book on this subject, and here it is. I know that this is a little weird for me to be doing this during a show, but probably my most important book to date of my 29 published and many unpublished books, the one that may remain the longest, other than my herbal books, may be God, Faith, and Reason. And in this book, I talked about this. A rabbi said to me the other day, why don't you read from your own book on this commandment? I said, what are you talking about? He said, you wrote about the meaning of worshiping the parents and what it really, honor thy parents. I have to find this. The meaning of Buddhism, Exodus, and the covenant of all tenets. I can't find it. I don't carry these things around in my mind. I remember it very well. I can't find it. Maybe you have the book and you could look it up yourself on honor thy father and thy mother. I remember exactly what the discussion was. I spoke with a very religious Jewish woman on the subject who had trouble with her own mother. And I said, I have had a lot of strife with my parents. I'm talking to me. I've always been a rebellious person. I always wandered from the tribe. I wandered from the city and the town and the village I was born in. I'm not in the land of my ancestors. I've been a wanderer my whole life. I've been a rebel my whole life. I follow a different drum. And as a result, I was rebellious to my parents, and we argued a lot. They are long gone. They're in heaven. So I said to this religious woman, I said, I don't understand this. How can you honor someone that you don't get along with? And she said, I don't get along with my own mother. But what the Hebrew really means is not worship your mother and father, but honor the fact that they gave you life. Bingo. Eureka. End of story. So you may disagree with your parents, argue with your parents, not get along with your parents, but you never hate your parents. They gave you life. Without them, you wouldn't be here. End of story. That should take away the burden that many of you carry in your strife. Is that a good one? That's the fifth commandment, honor thy father and your mother so that your days will be lengthened in the land of God your God is giving you. The sixth commandment, you must not murder. This is a big one. I once discussed this with a knowledgeable Christian religious man. I discussed it with a Jewish religious man. It doesn't say you shall not kill. It says you shall not murder. It's two different words. That means you can defend yourself in war and kill your enemy, in plain English. You must not murder. The sixth commandment, you must not murder. The seventh commandment, you must not commit adultery. Conduct extramarital relations with a married woman. That's a big loophole. That's a big loophole. I'll let that hang in the air. But I'm reading you the emissary. I'm giving you the bottom line here. You want the bottom line or you want the fantasy line? I mean, you read, you shall not do this. You want to know the inside story. I'm giving you the inside story, assuming you're still here. The eighth commandment, you must not steal. I think that's pretty clear, i.e. kidnap. The ninth commandment, you must not bear false witness against your fellow man. That would apply to all the Democrats. Trump is trying to reduce fraud and waste, and they're saying he's stealing. Musk is spending his own time trying to clear up fraud and waste, and they're calling him a murderer and a thief and a criminal and a Nazi. That's the Democrats. They're all bearing false witness against their fellow man. We're moving along. That's the ninth already. We're up to the 10th, and I'm going home. The 10th commandment, you must not desire your fellow man's house. You must not desire your fellow man's wife, his bondman, his bondwoman, his ox, his donkey, or anything else that belongs to your fellow man. It's pretty clear. Don't envy your neighbor. It's only going to produce hatred, which is going to produce a disaster. And I think those are the 10 commandments. These are sublime fundamentals of the 10 commandments. Belief in God, the negation of idolatry, respect God, devote one day a week to spiritual rejuvenation. Spiritual rejuvenation. The rest of the commandments are rather obvious. Any normal society bans murder, kidnapping, bearing false witness. We all know this. It doesn't matter what your religion is. Even an atheist in Marin County knows that. But by including these evident pillars of civilized life in the 10 commandments, God is telling us that we must observe all of the laws of the Bible, even the apparently rational ones, not because they make sense to us, but because they are divine commandments. And that, my friends, is all, although I would like to stay with you a little longer. And we know that when God began to speak, all the people witnessed God's voices, and the flames erupted. The flames erupted. The blast of the shofar and the mountain smoked. They miraculously saw God's voices and they heard God's word. When the people saw God's voices, they shuddered. They retreated from the mountain beyond the outer limits of the camp and stood at a distance. The ministering angels descended, calmed down the people, and transported them back to the mountain. The same thing happened if they heard each subsequent commandment. Wouldn't it be great if we could see God again? Wouldn't it be great? We don't believe in any of this today. People laugh at all of this. The educated people think that those who follow God's laws are rubes, stupid, dumb people. You have to decide for yourself. What does a civilized, God-fearing human being do? How do you behave? I once spoke to an elderly man who I considered elderly at the time. I'm older than he was at the time I spoke to him when I was a young man. I was on a ship, a cheap ship going to Europe. I don't know how old I was, 1967. I don't remember the year, 68. I don't remember the year. It was a vacation. Me and my friends booked the cheapest tickets we could get on a former troop transport, the motor vessel Waterman. I remember it to this day. It was the best time of my life. God, did we have fun. We stayed up all night partying, drinking, smoking marijuana on the ship. And then we slept during the day. But the four of us were in a bunk for 6. One bunk was empty, and in the other bunk, there was an old man in his 80s. I'm now older than him, and he was blind, and he never left his cabin. I think they brought him food. He was an old man, and he was blind, and he was from Holland. And I wasn't a party animal. I got tired of it, so I'd go down to the room while everyone was partying, and I would talk to him sometimes. I liked old people even then. And I once asked him, I forget his name, and I said to the old man, what is the meaning of life? And he looked up at me with his eyes that were fogged over. He was sitting in the lower berth, and I was standing. I was a young kid looking for the answers on my travels. He said, the meaning of life, the meaning of life. He said, I don't know. He said, you're born holding it and you die holding it. He was being comedic, and I'm being comedic right now because we have to lighten it up a bit. Was he right? I don't know whether he was right. But we all know what civility means, like it just said in the good book, the holy book, right? What did I just say to you? Where I'm going to conclude now. I said to you here, commandments are rather prosaic, except for the first four. The commandments are obvious. Any normal society bans murder, bans kidnapping, bearing false witness, and so on. Every society, Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Zoroastrian, Buddhist, they all ban murder, kidnapping, bearing false witness. That's what all religions teach. But then the old man told me something else on another day that I went down to speak to him, or another night. I don't know whether it was day or night, when I got tired of partying with my friends and drinking beer and running after girls on the ship. He said to me, to be serious, young man, he said, I think all religion boils down to one thing, and all religions boil down to the same thing. Do not do to others as you would not have them do to you, or do unto others as you would have them do to you. Period. If you follow that one, you're doing real good. That's a good one. It's an easy one to remember. You don't have to be religious to remember that one. And that, my friends, is today's God Talks. Notice I changed God Talk to God Talks because I'm not talking. I'm not talking here. That was God talking here through Michael Savage. And thank you for listening. And today is a Sunday. I'm going to try to do God Talks again. Now that I have new obligations, I do 2 podcasts a week. I make 2 appearances on Newsmax during the week. Then I have my own show on Sunday nights for an hour. I thought it would be less work, but I took on more work. Why? What crazy person would do this at any age? I did. Why? There's an ego element involved for sure, but there's much more than ego. I don't have to do this. I'm doing it because I believe God kept me alive for a reason, and he gave me the ability to use my mind, my tongue, and my heart for the good of mankind. Period. That is my work. And it's been my work ever since I've been a young social worker in New York, trying to create betterment for mankind while also living well myself. I don't want to live in rags. I don't want to live in tatters. I've earned every penny I've ever made. I don't have to apologize for it. I thank God for giving me the ability to earn a living. There's a time I couldn't, and I begged him to give me a living, and he did. But you see, when I said to God, God, please give me a living, it came with a responsibility. He didn't have me win the lottery. He said, I'll give you a living. You have to work very hard when he's giving you a living. That comes with the gift of life requires work. The gift of life that God gives us every day, the breath, requires work. It requires that we give back to God by trying to do the best we can, doing his work, spreading his message, whatever your religious orientation may be. And that's all I want to say today. And I thank you very much for being here. Thank you. Someone's writing it. Thank you for never giving up on us. I consider it a great privilege to hear your wisdom. God has brought us together here. God is great. Shalom. Thank you very much, folks. Very emotional today. Very emotional indeed. God is great.